I'll call the meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. Land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that Nakusp and the area have a rich indigenous history and acknowledge the Earl Lake Sinaiaks people within whose traditional lands we're meeting today. So we do have a late item, F3. We'll bring it down. The late item F3 2025 LG resolution amendment be included in the February 24th, 25 council agenda. Can I have a motion to bring that late item? Councillor Edwards, seconded. Councillor McClung. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Adoption of the agenda. A1. Recommendation of the agenda for the February 24th, 2025 regular meeting be adopted as presented, amended. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Knoyson, seconded. Councillor Huff. Questions? All in favor? Carried. One, adoption of the minutes, recommendation of the minutes of the January 27th, 2025 regular meeting be adopted as presented. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor McClung, seconded. Councillor Edwards. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. B2, adoption of the minutes, recommendation that the minutes of the February 10th, 2025 special meeting be adopted as presented. A motion, please. Councillor Edwards, seconded. Councillor Knoyson. Any questions? So, to Councillor Knoyson and Councillor Edwards and the mayor, you'll read it better next time that was a Zoom meeting. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. B3, adoption of the minutes, recommendation that the minutes of the February 18th, 2025 special meeting be adopted. Did I just do that one?
February 18th was
You did the 10th before, now you're doing the 18th.
Oh, I've already done it.
Nope, you're doing
the 18th, you're right.
Okay, special meeting be adopted as presented. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor McClung, seconded. Councillor Huff. Questions? All in favor? Carried. Presentations, none. Public hearings, none. Business arising from the minutes. Unfinished business. So F1 policy, non-market leasing. Everybody had a chance to read it all? So if I can bring it forward now, then we can discuss it. And if there's anything changed, we can amend. Recommendation that the policy C014, non-market leasing of civic land and or buildings be adopted. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor McLaren, seconded. Councillor Knoyson. Any questions?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to ask about, I mean, it's kind of referred to in the policy, but I was going to ask about how we are not allowed to provide assistance to business. And even if one of our facilities is leased to a nonprofit, how do we ensure that it's not providing assistance to business?
My thought would be, I'm just looking at Mark, he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but we can put that into the actual lease. Yeah. And so the lease would state that, you can't use the space for commercial purposes or anyone that you lease it out to. Generally speaking, we don't allow, the leasing out of space.
Allow letting for the most part. I think there's one lease that we do allow it.
Okay.
That's the kinship building.
Thanks.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Through the mayor. I just have a question. You say that the organization will be required to state their visions and goals for the future years. And I'm just wondering in regards to asset management, how that would be handled, because I wonder if they're wanting to say anything that like extra maintenance or asset management, like we're going to put a new roof on, or our plans is, to apply for a grant to do some type of upgrade to the building. So I'm wondering if that's something we would consider.
Yeah, that would all be like, they're proposing what they're gonna do in that building and to that building over the next 5 years.
Thank you.
Basically, yeah.
Other questions? Just trying to find it. There was a 3-term, I forget what it's called.
Triple net.
Triple net, I can't find it. That is.
Under definitions, section 2, item 3.
Yeah, means a lease where the tenant pays all expenses, including taxes, utility insurance, and maintenance repairs. So when I was speaking to the CEO today, it was sort of in the nominal rent means an annual rental rate of $10 annually for nonprofit. If this policy goes through, correct? All these terms. But what I'm wondering is, say it was a 5-year, we agreed to a 5-year lease. Utilities, insurance, maintenance, repairs, but then we fall right back into where, like the marina, when they did all that, we didn't have a budget for reserves, so just curious, what would we do for that?
Mayor, so you can be picky choosy on what proposals you accept. If you choose it to give it to an organization that looks like they're not gonna be able to sustain it, then don't. Give it to an organization that looks like they're gonna be financially viable. So that you can ensure that the proper maintenance and repairs are being done. That's the best we can do with that. Otherwise, I mean, charge market rent so that we can recover that stuff.
I know, so the Centennial building with the museum, library, and the historical archives, they pay a rental fee, but that fee goes into reserves, I'm understanding, no?
Not yet.
Not yet.
So we're trying to get that through this year where that's all gonna change. Right now, they actually don't even pay enough to cover the hydro and heat at this point. So that's and those are licenses of occupation, not leases. So the village is still technically the manager of that building.
Yeah.
So that's where we have come to an agreement with those organizations to up their taxation, up their rent, to cover all the costs of the building and to put away extra money for reserves. And that's hopefully gonna start in 2025.
Right. And then there could be some help from the RDCK possibly down the road.
If the RDCK has to agree to the tax increase.
I'll reach over to Councillor McLaren.
Just to clarify that, I think we had our first initial budget meeting on Friday last week, and I think it's built into the budget, so short of it being removed by the other relevant director, which would be the director for Area K, then it should be okay. And I think in conversations with their administration, that the bylaws, like the legislative structure is set up so that we can make the increases to pay for those increases. And just to speak to the increases themselves, it's money, it's taxation, right? That's coming from the village and residents of the village and people in the defined area K to pay for those things. So it's not like the RDCK is cutting a check, it's taxpayers' money.
Thanks for clarification. And also, we look at the Nakusp storage yard, that was called a license of occupation.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it should have never been.
And that'll get changed in 2026, I believe, that's kind of good.
2028, yeah, and also that because they're a commercial entity, they would not be eligible for a nominal rent. They would have to pay market rent, like any other commercial entity.
Then the land at Caribou, that's non-profit.
Caribou Society is not profit, so council would be able to consider a nominal rent for that, but of course, you have to take a look at the proposal.
It really comes down to the proposals. Okay, thanks for the clarification. Councillor Morrison?
Sorry, the polo yard is the one you were talking about just before. I'm sorry, which one is that?
It's across the road from, remember we went and we walked down and we took a look at that piece of land that was forested. It's across the street from that, up on Hot Springs Road.
Sorry, the one that you were referring to that was commercial?
Yeah, that's.
Okay, and so they would have to pay full commercial price for that, but they also couldn't apply for grants for it because they're not a nonprofit, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, any further questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay, there's a recommendation, outdoor gym, recommendation that the chief administrative officer be directed to provide a letter of support to accompany Randy McKenzie and Daniel Abraham application to the Columbia Basin Trust Community Development Program for purchasing and installing outdoor gym equipment designed for the use of the Nakusp senior population. I have a motion, Councillor Edwards, seconded. Councillor Canoisan, any questions? Councillor McClanahan.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions. The first is, I'm assuming that the village would be responsible for maintaining and or replacing this equipment if and when it fails. And the second question, just because, and I just noticed this just now, as it says it's designed for the use of Nakusp senior population, does that mean that non-seniors can't use it? Well, I don't know. It just says for senior population.
Councillor. We'll finish this. McLean's question. I don't see an issue myself. I don't know. To the staff, I'm not sure.
No, it's designed for the use of the Nakusp seniors population, but it's not specific to them using it. So they don't have to show any ID or anything like that for the, sorry, not myself, but as for once the equipment is purchased and installed, it does become the property of the village. So village staff would be responsible for maintaining it, doing regular inspections, and if council so desires, to replace it at the end of its lifespan. But it does tend to last a long time, that kind of equipment, like decades.
That would follow under the same terms as the play park, the way it is now. We're responsible for doing repairs after.
Yeah, so anything that we get for free is never really truly free.
Any other questions, Councillor Canoisan?
Do you need special insurance for using this equipment on
Through the mayor.
the staff?
Great question. No, we don't. So we have a blanket policy that we work through with Municipal Insurance Association British Columbia in my ABC. And basically anything that we do within our boundaries and anything that we purchase is part of our insurance policy.
Thank you. Councillor Howell?
Through the mayor to staff. Sorry, just to follow up on that. So there is an increased risk, so to liability. So I'm just curious, like, has that been weighed, or like, are we satisfied that we want to take that risk, or?
Well, that's, through the mayor, that's a good question for council to contemplate. What I would state though, like from what I know of the equipment, it's generally well designed. So it's designed so as not to be a hazard. So it's used in a lot of public areas. And generally speaking, when it comes to like the insurance and liability aspect, it doesn't have an impact on our premium. It's not that kind of installation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All in favor? Carried. F3, 2025 AKBLG resolutions. So we've got, I believe there's 7. So just to make it a little bit fun, everybody gets a turn to read one. So, so I'll go first. Recommendations and separate motions. So this would be the late item that came through. Recommendation number 1, alert ready program amendment to read. Whereas ineffective public notice for planned or unplanned emergency room closures create immediate life and death situations for BC citizens, especially in rural communities where the next emergency room may be hours away. And whereas health authorities are responsible for providing public notice for service disruptions in health service are the responsibility of the province, which already has access to the alert ready notification program, that the province identifies the criteria for using the service as there is a threat to human life, the threat is immediate, and there are recommended actions that may save lives. Therefore, be it resolved that UBCM urges the provincial government to expand the Alert Ready program to include health service so that health authorities can effectively reach the public and advise of emergency room closures. A motion to bring that one forward. Councillor McCarrick, seconded. Councillor Edwards. Questions? So actually, I get a lot of the notice alerts coming into your health, coming across, and I think I had 4 today saying emergency closures. So I see that they almost come every day. So, but for take example, if we get a closure in Nakusp, we don't know about it until either we get an email or someone gets advised, but what we're trying to do is we have an alert system. The Nakusp has an alert system. The RGCA has an alert system, but legally, I don't think we can actually put it out there because it would have to be the health services putting it out, if I'm correct. I think we'd be in to the CO. I think if we put it out, I think it could cause complications, correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, could cause complications, liability being one of them.
So I think this is a good one. The nice thing is it'll be a blanket. I'm not sure how it would come through. I'm not sure yet how that would work. Do you know?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So generally speaking, it would work a lot like our alert system, Voyant Alert. The difference, the thing that's really good about this is it goes across, it hits people's cell phones. I don't know if they can connect to emails or whatnot on their system, but it can be specific to an area. So they could actually, target every cell phone that's within a specific area, and then that's how they would make the broadcast. At least that's how our Voyant Alert works. So there's no reason why their system would work the same way.
And, that would help, so they know right away that the ER room's not open. Where do I go?
So the other thing they do is radio and TV broadcasting as well through.
That's good. Okay, thank you. Any other questions on that one? All in favor? Carried. And Councillor Edwards, do you want the next one?
Love to. Whereas several community council, board, and hearing disruptions have been caused by uncivil and unprofessional conduct by a small number of elected officials, resulting in policy intervention, adjournment to meetings, and a movement toward digital instead of in-person meetings. And whereas the Community Charter and Local Government Act do not adequately provide local governments and the province with the tools needed to respond effectively to the detrimental and paralyzing conduct of residents and elected officials who bully, harass, and intimidate others, despite the long history of local government openness and democratic values. Therefore, be it resolved that UBCM urge the provincial government to take all steps necessary to convey the urgent need to create an effective task force to analyze the incivility and unruly behavior problems and their causes, to consider best practices of other jurisdictions, and recommend legislation and enforcement mechanisms to address the crisis of uncivil and paralytic behavior that is impacting local government before the next local general election.
Motion to bring that forward. Councillor Franco, seconded. Councillor Hutt. Any questions? All in favor? Hearing. From the planning board, number 3.
Okay. Where are we? Number 3? All right. Whereas communities across British Columbia are experiencing significant infrastructure funding deficits for replacements and improvements as they reach the end of their useful lifespan at a cost solely burdened to the property owners, even though the infrastructure provides benefits to residents and tourists alike. And whereas the ever increasing downloading of requirements on each local government with no associated changes on how local governments can generate funds has adverse effects on the ability of local governments to raise adequate revenue and places increased pressure on the finite local government staff capacity to continuously research and apply for the current grant-based infrastructure funding model provided by the provincial government, which is biased towards benefiting larger or jurisdictions with greater economic resources. Therefore, be it resolved that UBCM urges the provincial government to allocate 1 up to 7% collected as provincial sales tax to be used solely for investment in municipal infrastructure and asset renewal for a defined time period, and that the proportion each municipality receives be related to the amount of the PST that is generated within each municipal boundary.
Okay, Got a motion from Councillor Edwards, seconded Councillor Canoison. Questions? All in favor? Carried. Councillor Canoison, do you want number 4?
Okay. Whereas under section 25 of the Coastal Ferry Act, which supersedes the BC Labor Relation Code, the act states if it is deemed that the delivery of ferry services is necessary for the protection and health, safety, and welfare of the residents of British Columbia, and whereas inland ferry services in the interior create a part of the highway providing access to and from British BC communities from which are entirely part or partly accessed by ferry and have been limited by labor relation disruptions affecting citizens' ability to access essential services such as health services, emergency services, fuel for heating homes, businesses, food supply chain, and access to schools and work. Therefore, be it resolved that UBCM urges the provincial government to recognize that all ferry services are essential to health, safety, and welfare of British Columbians, and that a minimum requirement is set for the number of frequency of daily sailings to provide adequate access to communities that are entirely or partly accessed by inland ferry, whereas at BC Ferry.
Thank you. Can the motion please? Councillor Huff, seconded. Councillor McLaren Cole. Questions? All in favor? Carried. Councillor Huff.
Number 5, whereas BC Hydro has a 2024 call for power indicating the need for additional 3,000 gigawatts an hour a year as early as fall to 2028. And whereas Clean BC Roadmap to 2030 advocates for low carbon energy production. Therefore, be it resolved that UBCM urges the provincial government to incentivize BC citizens to invest in individual low carbon power generation, such as solar panels, residential and commercial property owners, to alleviate the burden on the electrical grid and provide self-sufficiency for more rural and remote communities, aiding in the provincial goals through Clean BC.
Thank you, Councillor Huff. Motion. Seconded. Councillor McLaren Cole. Questions? All in favor? Carried. Item 6. Whereas medical practice has been restricted to the province or territory in which the license was granted, as each province has its own regulatory body. And whereas BC has a shortage of medical professionals contributing to long wait times, emergency room closures, and difficulty accessing primary care. Therefore, be it resolved that UBCM urges that provincial government to hire more qualified medical professionals by providing immediate provisional licenses for those trained in Canada. One motion, please. Councillor McLaren Cole, seconded. Councillor Huff. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Councillor Edwards, you want the last one?
Yes, please. Whereas inconsistent grant-based programs favor communities that already have the resources and capacity to apply for grants to pursue and complete projects simultaneously, creating inequities for smaller communities where an inordinate amount of time is spent on pursuing grants instead of doing the work of community development. And whereas programs like the Community Works Fund provide local governments with stable, predictable, and dedicated funding equitably for all municipalities. Therefore, be it resolved that UBCM urges the provincial government to implement consistent and predictable funding for housing, infrastructure, and rural economic development.
Good. Motion, please. Councillor McLaren Cole, seconded. Councillor Canoison. Questions? Councillor McLaren Cole.
Just one comment on all of them. I think we're only allowed one whereas statement in the AKBLG guidelines, so they might be coming back for, maybe not, okay. They might come back for a little bit of cleanup, but no big deal.
So, any further questions on them? All in favor? Carried. I just wish to thank staff and Deputy Corporate Officer for having the time to put these together. All right, G monthly reports, G1. Recommendation of the Hot Springs report, February 2025, be received for information. Have a motion, please. Councillor McLaren Cole, seconded. Councillor Edwards. I see the. Yeah, just gonna bring it up here. So anyway, go ahead, I'm just gonna bring it up, anybody's got questions?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I've got a couple comments and a couple questions. Just very happy, heartened even to see this report. Specifically the focus on new signage, staff training, increase in consistent service levels and delivery, and a look to revitalizing the campground area. I have two questions. One is, given the potential for increased food sales and, well, just increased food sales in the lobby, I guess, of the building, is there potential for net revenue, like actual profit from that? And is it possible to do that while still maintaining service and training levels? Question one.
Direct the question through the CEO to our director, or hospitality manager, Robin, if you wish to answer.
Sure, I do that. I think there are a lot of opportunities and I'm definitely exploring them. I'm addressing the lobby renovations in stages. For me, the biggest issue is the requirement for multiple sinks to meet the expectations for food safety service. Right now, there's one sink. We need more than one sink. I think it's 3. So that is a little bit of a stumbling block that I have to address. But prior to that, what I'd like to do is set the lobby up with better retail stations, display areas, better drink cooler, like a beverage cooler. There is a large display cooler when you first walk in the door. It's very old, very loud, and it also has no lights in it. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at a pass-through so that the staff can get out to the front door quickly in case of an emergency, rather than having to go all the way around. Looking at a lot of little things, and so I'm trying to grab the low-hanging fruit and address those before I get to the triple singers. So the answer is yes, but not right away.
Yeah.
Supplement, yeah.
Through the mayor, thank you. And my second question through the mayor is, how does all of this seemingly great work carry on after 1 year? And the kind of secondary question is, can this facility function effectively, i.e. maintain service levels, financial benefits, etc., without having dedicated management?
I'm not sure that's a question I can answer, but I can tell you that I'm doing everything in my power to set them up for success. So, yeah, looking at absolutely everything to provide them with the best opportunity to fly. Should my contract, should I drive away? Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Knozen?
I'm just wondering, through the mayor to the director of the Hot Springs, so could you please, or is it director?
Manager.
Manager, thank you. Could you please tell me what the timeline is for completion of the renovations of the lobby?
Absolutely, for sure. So the shutdown is at the end of April, April 21st until May 9th. So we'll be doing a lot of work in that time period. And my sort of time frame and goals are that when we reopen the doors on May 9th, that the bulk of that sort of lobby renovation has been accomplished. We are very fortunate to have a carpenter on staff now at the Hot Springs. So all of our hopes and dreams are evolving much faster now, because I'm able to say, I'd like you to build this, and it actually does get built. I'm very excited about that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So is he out for hire?
No.
Okay. So thanks, Robin.
You're very welcome.
I really appreciate your report, and it was funny, I happened to be invited to the seniors hall at 4:00 on Saturday. I didn't know what it was, Origins of Forest Therapy, the health benefits, science the act evidence, what a forest therapy session looks like. Didn't know what it was, but, after I found out a little bit more, and actually Robin went to it, and I see the people in the audience that also went to it. And, it was an eye opener. I didn't realize what forest therapy was, but I'll go into more detail later. But, when I was talking to Robin previously, she's trying to develop a walk around trail that comes up a big loop, right? Am I correct? We have a lot of old growth timber there, so mainly it's a way of healing post-traumatic stress syndrome, other ailments, actually a whole bunch of, and actually it's being prescribed by doctors. It started in Japan and it's becoming well known all over the world. And we have and it's been known in Vancouver, it's been brought up many times that we have a community forest and we have a great opportunity. We have a hot springs, so there's a great opportunity to develop this forest therapy. But I won't go into too much detail, but I think it's something that looks very promising for our valley. They keep talking about Nakusp is probably the natural gateway to forest therapy. So anyway, thank you. I won't go into too much more. I'll bore you to death. All right, any other questions on that?
Yeah, sorry, through the mayor to staff. So sorry, the fees charged facility, like what does that all encompass?
The fees they're charged.
Yeah, is that just,
So that would be entrance into the pools themselves.
That's all added in this.
Oh, sorry.
In this table, that's just pool.
that's just the pool?
So that's just swimming.
Your sales, like is it your sales HS facility, is that not?
It's everything else. So
That's totally
pot-
separate, okay.
Pot food.
Okay,
all that.
gotcha,
Yeah. So fees charge facility is strictly swim.
just swims, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Supplementary, yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All in favor? Carried. Operations Department quarterly update. Recommendations of the Operations Department quarterly report dated February 24, 2025 be received for information. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Morrison, seconded Councillor Huff. Questions? Councillor McConaughey.
Because nobody else put their hand up, no question, but just through the mayor, if you can very direct. That's right.
I'm just gonna. I'll just wait a bit. Anybody got any questions? Thanks for that.
Through the mayor to staff, just out of curiosity, has the water service been connected to the ball diamonds here?
Water service was installed. I don't know if the last leg was connected. I'm looking down for a
The water service, it's not connected to the irrigation at this point,
Okay.
but it's ready to go for the spring.
Yeah, but the kind of village main tapping the water main, getting the service there is done.
It's done, it's clean. Okay, perfect.
So anybody online who wondered who was speaking in the back, it was Terry Welsh, who is the manager looking over the not manager, the volunteer main man, main person who is doing the irrigation and he's doing a great job. Thank you. Actually, PC Hydro, I believe you're having talks tomorrow, or you met with them today? Down at the marina,
Tomorrow, yeah,
Tomorrow.
they're working on their condition assessment.
so I think they're here all week, from what I was told from Mary Ann Coles. So that's good. Any other questions? All in favor? Okay. Motions arising from the reports? None. New business? Not for board appointments? Recommendations that the council make the following appointments for the Nakusp Board Directors, Mason House Village of Nakusp Councillor. Statutory is Teresa Weatherhead, RDCK Area K Director Statutory, John Can, Patrick Judd, Jennifer Irvinson, Christopher James, and Scott Baker. Have a motion, please. Councillor Noisen, seconded. Councillor Edwards.
Sure.
Questions? Councillor McCarnacle?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions. This is the only influence we have over the community forest board. So this is a very important step in our year. And my question, well, I have a procedural question, which is there's 8 people recommended, but for some reason we're only appointing 7. Can maybe through the staff, can they explain that?
Yeah, so what
I know it's in the report, but
Yes. So I think when I read it, it is allowed in their minutes, but I think it's just in case of it's more of a training for the next step. Because I think there is someone leaving in probably the next year, so a lot of training, but I'll let you finish.
So yeah, that's their reasoning for it, and that's absolutely correct. The articles of incorporation state that the shareholder can only appoint 7 directors. The directors, however, can appoint additional directors themselves. So that's what they're looking to do in this case. But once the next appointment comes around, it has to revert back to 7 directors.
okay, thanks.
And actually, the number 6 and number 7, 2 people, I know them very well. They're well versed in forestry, one's an RPF, and the other one, it's from my next door neighbor on forestry, so well versed in forestry, so it's good to see that. It's good.
Yeah, with supplemental. Actually, it's kind of on that point. When I was involved years ago, it seemed like there was more of a broader representation of different aspects of the community, and maybe in kind of counterintuitive way, there was less focus on forestry specifically, because, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but it's a corporate governance board for a corporation. It's not an operational board to run the company. So, I mean, I don't want to stop this process, but I think maybe in the future, I mean, the analogy I was using when I was speaking to somebody about it earlier is that, good teachers aren't necessarily good principals. Like the purpose of the directors of this company are to make it a well-run company, not to get into the operational and tell them where to do cut blocks and so on. So I don't know if I really have a question, but or maybe the question was there a consideration, maybe our liaison to NACWOR can speak to the deliberation process behind how we got to, I'm not saying they're not good people, anyway, I think my question understood.
Okay, thanks, Councilman McCarnacle. I sort of hear what you're saying. I'm looking at that. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the 7 that were more heavy into forestry, and the other 3 are different aspects. So it's probably 60% forestry. So I'll let Councillor Husky come on.
Yeah, Mayor, to answer your question there, Councillor McClaricko, applicants is one of the challenging.
Yeah, right.
There to actually go through the process and selecting candidates to join the board is just getting people to apply. Is a little difficult. That would be one of the main reasons. And I don't know, as a board, if we do, or if the direction to take is, I'm assuming the way how I'm interpreting it is more of a business background to fill in as a director there. So I don't think that process has been developed yet in how we really select what we're looking for. I guess.
Councillor Noisen?
I'm just read where the stakeholder may appoint anyone it chooses to be on the board, provided they are not members of council, and may choose to remove existing board members at discretion. However, if the stakeholder believes the company is successful, it is reasonable to ratify the board's recommended appointments and to approve the existing directors who want to continue. And the question I have, having read that, is what is the measure for success? And so it says if the stakeholder believes it's successful, I'm just wondering, how do we determine success? Understand?
Oh, that's not for me to answer. That's for you to decide.
I'll let Councillor House speak on that.
To the mayor, to Councillor Canoisen, the main, I guess, deciding factor in that would be financially how the company is doing. So if revenue is low, profitability is low, then obviously that would give you your answer right there.
Councillor McLaren.
Just a question on that, on the metrics and the finances. I was gonna save this for later because it comes up in information items from the minutes of their last meeting. There was a change to the dividend policy, and I don't know what it is. So, nor maybe we should know, I don't know. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but just because we're speaking about financial health and dividend and outcomes, and I mean, the main outcome from my understanding is ultimately getting a dividend out of being a shareholder in a corporation. So, and I know that there's reasons for why we haven't had a dividend in the past couple of years. But I guess my question is, what's the new dividend policy? If that's something we're allowed to speak about or even know about. And
I'm
keeping
not sure,
separation.
so I couldn't answer it to the CEO.
You should know that answer. You're the shareholder, just as you're investing in any company on the market, you would want to know what the dividend is.
Thanks to the CEO, to Councillor McLaren, did that answer it?
It answered my question that we should know what the policy is, but I still don't know what the policy is.
Should Councillor help there? Right. I do know that we were told is the reason there was no dividend the last couple of years because they were trying to pay off the land. What the name of the land? Just up on preemption.
Green States.
Green States, yes. And I think that should be paid off, and they said there should be a dividend next year.
Yeah.
If I'm correct.
There, yeah, it's all about that reduction. Yeah, currently. So.
But like the terms are still the same. I think it was 25% RDCK, 75% village. That's still the same. Okay.
Yeah, that's our bylaw. They can't change that. Only we.
Any other questions? All in favor? Carry. Okay, this next one's an interesting one. My dander. Recommendation that the village, J2, recommendation that the village of Nakusp enters into the memorandum of understanding with the RDCK to collaborate on Indigenous engagement activities, and further that $40,000 be transferred to the RDCK to manage pooled Indigenous engagement funds on behalf of participating municipalities and meet the engagement requirements under the Emergency and Disaster Management Act. I have a motion to bring that forward. Councillor Edwards, seconded. Councillor McLaren. Questions? Councillor McLaren.
I just have a comment. I think there's some difficulty with how this program was rolled out or how it was presented from the regional district staff to our staff, but I'm hoping that it's an effective use of provincial funds. Although I'm not so naive to think, I think their timeline is accelerated given how long it's taken them to get to where we're at right now, which is very late in the game. given the timeline that they're working, that we're all working with. And I think if you look at their, they had a Gantt chart, like a calendar with when they were gonna do certain things, and I think they wanted to do engagement between June and August this year with First Nations. And I don't know what universe they're living in, I don't think that's gonna happen, but, I mean, if they can pull that off in the next few months, kudos to them. But anyway, we shall see.
Anyone else? Councillor Edwards?
So I'm just reading on here, so it seems like because RDCK took a really long time to get back to us with what we needed to do. It says the village has no time to do anything else with the funding. It must be used by March 31st, 2025. So through the mayor, is it kind of a case of use it or lose it?
Yeah, through the mayor, that's exactly it.
So yeah, after reading all that, I did meet with the CEO today to understand it more, because it was
Mhm.
kind of confusing, so. There's 9 communities, and they each got $40,000, so 40 times 9 is $360,000. And it gets dispersed, so it goes into a big pot, RDCK looks after it, but they'll be hiring a consultant out of that. So out of that 360, there might be, I don't know what the consultant would cost, $100,000, hard to know. So now you're down to 260. And now that's got to be distributed between the 9 communities and RDCK for meeting with Indigenous people. We have no one really in our area. So I'm not sure if we're going to be able to use it or how it's going to roll out. So it's going to be interesting because you've got Castlegar, Nelson, and Creston, bigger centers, because I can see them using a big pot of money. And we might, little communities like Spokane, Denver, Silverton, us, we may not get much of the pot that I'm seeing. So, and I know the other part of it is, I know we don't have the staff time to do it, so I sort of understand how it got put all into one pot. But it would have been nice to have more knowing up front what was going on, get thrown this in. Not much, it was not much of a turnaround on it, so anyway, that was my only concern.
In a way, and I don't want to dismiss the work, because it is valuable work, but in a way, we're just checking the box here. Like the province gave us money to tick a box on their emergency disaster management. At the Emergency Disaster Management Act checklist that we all have to now do, and there's a bunch of things on there, so there's definitely value to the work. But like you said, I don't think we have the staff capacity to, even if we had all $40,000 to, whom are we hiring to do that? So I'm not pleased with the RDCK staff timeline and how they rolled that out. And I think that there's some loss in pooling the whole region together. You're definitely going to lose some detail on the ground, but at the same time, it is what it is if we send the money back.
Yeah. To the CEO, previously when we met with the Siniacs there, where did that funding come from?
That money came from the community to community grant, which was offered by UBCM. And that was for, in our case, we used it for First Nation engagement and relationship building.
And that fund is gone.
Yeah, we used it. That funding is usually available every single year.
Excuse me. Yeah, thank you. All right, any other questions? All in favor? Carried. A3. COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant. Recommendations that council authorize staff to transfer $224,585 from the COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant for local governments for eligible expenditures in 2024. Motion, please. Councilor McLaren, seconded. Councilor Edwards, the rest of them.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's just a question about, I think we've talked about this in the last couple of meetings, that this is just kind of manna from heaven, like it's just free money that with no strings attached, which is good in some ways, but it also it's kind of worrisome because it's plug and hold that won't be plugged forever. So when this money runs out, we're gonna have to make up for that shortfall somehow. So I guess if I have a question, it's through to staff about. How do we get back to where we need to be once we no longer have this free cash to plug operational holes?
Very good question. And Councilor McLean, go to the staff to see what you wish to. I'm gonna take this one.
So part of it is. Most of the past 5 years, like. 5 years since COVID now? Yeah. Despite having funding to fill holes and lost revenues, we've still had a surplus regardless of that, but we've been using the funding because those are eligible expenses and it needs to be used. So. Like those 136,000 of budget revenues that we were short. It's not like we actually needed that money. It wasn't. Like the hot springs was 98,000 in its full revenues and sales, but also expenses were even more than that short. So it actually operated at a profit. But because we're eligible to fill that hole with this money and this money has to be used out, that's what we're doing. The main one in here, I mean, we've already talked about it. It is an expense that was funded through the COVID funding that had to look further ways. That was the recreation clerk position, which we've already started to make that plan over the 3 years to get that through taxation. And so the rest isn't really a concern.
Any other questions? Councilor McPherson?
Not to nitpick, but through the mayor to staff, just wondering, it says $15,000 in miscellaneous. What kind of miscellaneous things are we talking about?
Miscellaneous. Basically, I've had that line item every year and it's just for staff management time dealing with stuff.
To CEO through the Director of Finance. At the end of this 2025, there'll be $49,000 left. Is that for 2026? Did I read that?
Yeah. I put that we're gonna pull an additional 40. So in the original provisional budget, I wasn't sure how much revenue would be eligible to be used under this grant. So we had budgeted that 49,000 to come from general surplus for the rec coordinator position. And so I'm moving that to 49 to the COVID restart. After the money's gonna be completely gone after 2025. There will be no more money left.
Just because people will hear this and they won't understand. So the whole purpose is the money that would have otherwise been pulled out of surplus, we can instead add this money to surplus. So that's the reason why we're doing it this way. It's to help generate greater reserves.
Any other questions? Councilor Knoll?
So when we report on this, there won't be a request to prove that there was a need for that money in that spot?
We're meeting the reporting requirements every year. They're on our financial statements. They get audited, so it's the same for here.
Questions? All in favor? Carried. K1, information items. Recommendations as items K1 to K7 be received for information. Have a motion, please. Councilor McLean, seconded. Councilor Edwards. And so there's 7 here. And I'm gonna start with 1, 2, and 3. No remove. Actually, when I read this letter, I really liked it. And it brought back common sense here. I see for next year, I see something different here. And I think this can be brought forward into a positive operation to help in the snow removal. So, on the sidewalks. So that was that one. And we're downtown Main Street, it's probably the busiest place. It's commercial, and 40% of our population is 60 and over. So it made a lot of sense to me. I'm glad she brought this forward. RGCK media release on. This was on industrial, commercial, institutional, organics, diversions, subsidies and supports. So I do sit on the joint resource recovery meeting, the committee, and this is becoming a big subject, organics, or not, waste, no,
Compost.
compost is becoming a big subject. And especially now with our landfill closing here in 2025. You have a bag of compost and you have a bag of normal garbage, it's 2/3 heavy to 1/3 like of a normal bag. So, and now we're transporting all that material to Oceania. So when we talk about carbon footprint, you're gonna see more and more. With the landfill closing, you're gonna see a lot more trips heading to Oceania. So if there's a way to find a way to compost more in our community, we have a great opportunity here to reduce the carbon footprint. And the nice thing about composting, it's a natural item that comes back. You can use it for gardening. So New Denver are doing something that, and actually keeps coming up in our meetings, how positive it, the feedback we're getting from New Denver and Silverton, with how they're composting. So I'll just give you a little update what they do, and I would like for them to come to council and do a presentation. They did one before, but it's really growing. Right now, they have 7 composters, and they put them on a block. So if this, there was one block, and there's 20 people on that block, they all get together and they buy this, I think, I'm not sure, I think RDCK buys this unit. It's got 2 stalls in it, and everybody's responsible on that block. And they take their compost to it, and once you get there, there's a combination, you open it, you put your compost in it, and you spin it, right? And you lock it up, and you go away, and once it's full, you move over to the next one. And on Saturday, I met with a fellow that's a manager at the landfill here, recycling area, and he lives in New Denver and is on one of those blocks. So I asked him a bunch of questions, and he's gonna get back to me. I said, what do you do with the waste? Where do you take it, the compost after? He's gonna get back to me, but it's at the school in New Denver. It's on, they've got 7 of these units. So that probably pretty well covers all the blocks. But what I don't know yet is how do they handle the industrial? Like you've got all the industrial areas that have compost, restaurants, things like that. So, but I know in the budget for Nakusp, they do have a compost. They have in their budget of, which is gonna cost $1.4 million, they put in their budget to put to have compost out at our landfill or over in that area where the recycling areas, and I'm going, wow, that's enormous amount of money. And I'm thinking, there's gotta be a cheaper way to do this, and so I'm not sure where it's gonna go, but I'm just saying, Nelson's doing it, and it's working, New Denver's doing it, and I'd love to know more how it's working, but all I hear is how great comments coming back, how good New Denver's doing with their composting. So that's that one. I guess it's number 4. Is LinkedIn. So everybody had a chance to read this one. So I'm not sure, I know in the public, I'm not sure if they had a chance to read this. So mainly, we've been asked 2 questions this is from, who is this from? Matthew Dubucio, who is this from? I'm trying to figure out who sent this.
So this is from Matthew Scar, and Matthew Scar is with the province, and his, basically his job with the province is to review applications for developments and how they fit into the environmental assessment process.
Right. And then he sent a respectfully request that the village of Nakusp submit comments on the designation application to the EAO by February 28, 2025. So it didn't give us much time. This letter was sent to me on February 14th. And so our CEO did a fabulous job of doing a bunch of research and has prepared a letter to go, and I believe all councils had a chance to look at it. Maybe not. Do you remember it? Sorry. Yeah. So there was two questions here. I'm just gonna find them. Your response, so these are the kind of questions they asked. Based on the review of information in the designation application, what is your understanding of the potential effects of the project? Are those effects equal to or greater than the effects of other projects that typically require environmental assessment? So Zinkton is the new, actually they have a website that they're planning to open up in between New Denver and Caslow, Sandon, an outdoor recreational ski sort of resort, a combination of many things, backcountry skiing, and also the nice thing, gondolas, what do you, gondola? Gondola. And with a gondola, you gotta remember now that you're not walking on the ground, you're flying in the air, up to the air, and it opens up a lot of areas. So after looking at all this, the CEO did a great job. Mainly, it came down to, and actually the Zinkton people, David Harley, who's one of the main spearheaders of this. They've hired environmental people and they've done an amazing job. And only one feedback came back from one environmental group, the Indigenous people, right at this time had it doesn't look like there's any complaints. They're working diligently with all groups, and mainly out of this conclusion came on, based on the information received, the proposed Zinkton CRA appears to be suitable for use in the creation of an all-season backcountry experience. Any identified potential adverse impacts appears to be mitigable, something. And any identified residual effects are not expected to be significant, nor are they expected to contribute significantly to the cumulative effects. So actually, my wife's a teacher in English, so I'll learn one day. But anyway, what I've viewed, and actually, if you ever get a chance, look on their website. All you gotta do is type in Zinkton, and I think this is a great potential for, well, it'll help communities like New Denver, Silverton, Sandon, Caslow, and it'll spur down to our area. And the nice thing is, it's going to be run by a certified green energy company out of Sandon. I forget what they're called themselves. But it's gonna be running that whole operation. So they're certified green, so you can't get anything better than, and it's been running since 1890, the silversmith plant. And so the other question is, would requiring an environmental assessment by the EO of the project help protect the environment, foster a sound economy, support the well-being of BCians, support reconciliation and with Indigenous peoples in BC. And so help protect the environment. So an EO, an EO was already required for the project, and which outlined the areas of concern, will be expected to adhere to all relevant laws. So they're doing their due diligence there. So pretty well, all the questions have been answered, and from what I've seen and read, and myself, I'm comfortable with it, and I would like to hear more about it, because I would like to bring this forward into action items. So if anybody has any other questions to the CEO.
So, sir, if you wouldn't mind, I'd just like to just provide a little bit of context to this. So just for people who might be listening and for council's consideration, we're not being asked whether or not, you know, we approve of the project or we think the project has merits. All we're being asked is, so what's happened here is one group has come forward and said to the province, we would like this resort to be held to a different standard of other developments that would happen in this, you know, throughout the the approval branch of the province. And they're hanging on the fact that this operator, so the criteria is that they have to do this EAO review. If they have if they have 2,000 or more bedrooms. And so Zinkton is saying that they're going to have 1,700 bedrooms, which is below the threshold, but this group has made an argument that, well, actually, in fact, it's within an area where the province allows an optional EAO, and that's if the number's within the 15% of that 2,000 threshold. So all they're asking is whether we think, as a local government, that whether or not they should be held to that higher standard to develop the EAO and have that done, which is basically an extra environmental assessment overview. So that's where these questions are based off of. It has nothing to do whether or not we approve of it, or nothing to do with whether we think that, there's anything wrong with it or good for it. It's just based on that question.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, because
Yeah.
it probably did sound that we approve.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear that
No, that's great.
what.
Yeah, so mainly there was the two questions that they wanted asked. And please, everybody, get a chance to read the Zinkton project. And so mainly we will be, well, it's up to council, but we will be sending a letter out on these questions that they asked. So any other questions on this one? Anyway, that's all I have on this. Oh, do you go ahead?
I actually just wanted to go back to K1 and the snow removal. And I want to wholeheartedly agree with the mayor that I think we need to do Main Street a little bit better than we have.
Any other items, Councilor McLean?
Well, I'm just gonna say on the Zinkton one that. Can we express our disappointment in the province for sending us a letter on the Friday of a long weekend and expecting us to give it back to them in a week? And these are not, I mean, these are expert questions. This takes a lot more review just to answer your question, I have no problem with what you're saying, I agree with. But, and to what the CEO said, I don't think it needs to be held to a higher standard, but this is absurd. If this is their level of, this is the engagement that they want from us to, like 5 business days later, come back with something, so.
Thanks, Councilor. Actually, I received it on the February 14th, Valentine's Day, but I didn't open it until Saturday. I think Monday was a holiday too, wasn't it?
It was.
Left us Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Not much time. So I really, really appreciate the CEO's taking his whole weekend to put it together, a letter that I hope everybody had a chance to read it. Amazing work. And please, everybody get a chance to go on their website to really understand it more. And I really like being certified green. That power plant's been sitting there since 1890, and it's a great opportunity to service that whole area. All right. Any other questions? All in favor? Carried. The items recommendations of items K4 be moved to action items. Can I have a motion, please? Councilor McLean, seconded. Councilor Edwards. Questions? Favor? Carried. So action items, this would be L2, I guess. Recommendation that the press. So, okay, there's 2 here. Recommendations that the request from the Nakusp Area Community Foundation be received and filed. Motion, please. Councilor McLean, seconded. So, any questions? All in favor? Okay. L2, the letter be sent. Might have to help me to the CEO.
That a letter be sent to the province. In regards to the Zinkton development. Now that's where council has to decide how you want to proceed, in support of the an extra EAO or not in support of an extra EAO.
I'll make the motion that we. Maybe word this better, that we write it. That the EAO is not necessary.
Councillor Edwards, any questions? All in favor? Carried. Action items. Oh, we're done. We're done. Okay, notice of motion. Questions from the press or public? So, next. This to the, I'm just gonna go, so online, is there anybody online right now that has any questions? That must be directed to the chair and must be part of our agenda today. Okay, to the participants in the gallery, any questions? Go ahead and speak your name. Just if you can stand and tell us your name and.
Corinne Tessier, to the mayor. On the question of the lease policy of village buildings, will all of the leases be the same? Or will there be the option to these clauses? So for example, if a lease could say that the building will be dedicated for this purpose, that could be one example. So the question is, will all the leases be the same, or is there some flexibility in the clauses for each lease? Customized,
Yeah, so in the leases, there's one for nonprofit and for.
nonprofit,
Nonprofit,
nonprofit.
yeah. So,
And I have a second question
okay,
about that.
I'll pass this on to the CEO because I'd probably get it messed up.
I'm gonna pass it on to Mark.
Yeah, so they're all going to have the same, they're all gonna be based on the same guidelines that are in the policy, but they don't all have to be exactly the same. Some people may, like, different properties are gonna have different requirements, so they're not gonna all be. There will be specific clauses required in each one. They're all gonna have the same guidelines, like triple net part and that based in the policy.
And I guess it would be up to council to say, we may want something different added more or things like that too, or is it pretty standard?
Yeah, so you could do, based on the policy, you could do less, like. Well, you know what, they're nonprofit, but they do this in the building, they wanna do this in the building that doesn't really fit their mandate, it's not really nonprofit, so. We'll give them a 50% break, cause half the building they're using for nonprofit. Ventures and the other half is more business. So you could give them a partial, I guess a partial decrease on the rent based on the policy, but you couldn't be like, we're gonna give you rent and we're gonna pay your utilities and we're gonna pay your taxes and we're gonna, you know,
So in a way, it's getting rid of the permissive tax exemption, this policy.
that's a separate policy, so they still have to apply to that on their own. Yeah.
So it wasn't so much about the amount of money, it was more about. Is there going to be any negotiation flexibility in what can be done in the building or the purpose of the lease? For example, dedicated to the support of local agriculture would be something like that, that the building be used for. I'm not saying that will be, it's just an example. And is there any flexibility in negotiating some of the clauses of the lease?
Good question.
Yeah, so again, you can, like I said, you can negotiate the clauses, you can. And they present and it seems like, okay, this is really more for the business sector, like what they're doing, and you can decide that that doesn't really deserve, I think, like a nominal rent and they should be paying for that. But maybe everything else they're doing is like nonprofit in nature and they should get, so you.
So the framework behind the policy is, it's not so much to better council's ability to make a decision. is to make sure that council is following a consistent thought pattern to come to their decision.
Is anybody else? I'll just see if there's anybody else. No? Okay, well, I'll let Corinne
Yeah.
finish.
My second question is there a draft lease, or when will a draft lease document be available that complies with the new policy?
Well, after this, we're gonna be reaching out to anybody with an existing lease first. And notifying them that they'll need to be following this policy going forward. They'll need to prepare a proposal for the renewals. If they don't have an existing lease, they need to do one for that. And then I imagine within um 6 weeks maybe, but again, it's not. It's just the basic terms of each lease that are going to be the same, so I don't know if a template will. Depending on what you're looking for, like, I don't know if a template's gonna answer your question. But 4 to 6 weeks is when the template will be ready.
Okay.
And to the CEO, to the director of finance, right now, we only have 2 buildings really that we own, that we do this type of lease that we're looking at, correct? This new policy,
We only have more than that.
but the one that for the community, for the Centennial building is separate.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so really, there's only 2 that we would actually use it for.
Look, we have the daycare, we have the senior center, there's quite a few.
There's also land leases as well, Carver Society, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, can you stand and speak, state your name for the.
I'm Carolina Dalglish. That policy, is that pertaining to the fire hall as well?
Probably, yeah, it would be, yeah.
It would be,
It's the lease policy. It's the lease policy.
Yeah.
Okay, my question actually is about the outdoor gym equipment. I've seen this be put out in a lot of different places and it doesn't get used. And then the village or the town is responsible for its maintenance and nobody ever uses it. And you know, just like the lights on the waterfront, who ends up paying for the electricity for the remainder of the project? Who has to maintain all the lights? It's the taxpayers. And the gym equipment, I can't see a lot of seniors using it. I walk a lot on, where is this supposed to go anyway?
To the staff, I believe it's where, somewhere around where the new park is now, right?
Yeah, so the exact location hasn't been established because we don't know what the exact footprint is. But the idea was it would probably be in the park area closer to the other equipment, like the playground for kids.
Playground.
Right, because like, I see very few kids playing on the playground. And the village is still responsible to maintain the wood chips and all that other stuff. And it just seems that there's one project after another that gets put through grants. And then the village and the taxpayer ends up maintaining it after that.
Okay, thank you. Actually, when you said you don't see many, I'm just gonna answer a little bit here. I know you're talking about the new facility we just built, right? With the logs and everything. Actually, it's very busy, what I've seen. It gets very, very busy. And I believe that the senior equipment is close, right beside it. It's a great opportunity for the seniors to take their grandchildren there and let them play on them, and they would also play on they could also get in shape too in the seniors. So a combination of both, it gives them an opportunity to get out with their grandchildren and their children. I hear what you're saying. You know, just like anything free is never free, so I understand. Councillor Smoot.
I was just going to say that there's been a few times where we engaged with the community in the arena. And I can recall in my notes being asked specifically for that kind of equipment for seniors by seniors, so just saying that that was what I heard personally.
And I know they did I was there when they did the presentation to the seniors and they all wanted it,
Mhm.
so. And like I said, 40% of our population are seniors. So there's some opportunity there. So, any other questions? Hearing none. I'll notice in camera. Items brought forward from the camera. And recommendation that council February 2024, 2025 regular meeting council may be adjourned at 7:51
We
PM and the meeting is 7:02 again. Okay.